Welcome to Smart Reads in Minutes. Today we're diving into The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss with a detailed chapter-by-chapter summary. Let's get started. Cautions and Comparisons: How to Burn $1 Million a Night. This chapter opens with a vivid anecdote of a late-night conversation at 30,000 feet over Las Vegas, where Ferriss meets Mark, a man of immense wealth who casually reveals that he and his friends regularly lose between $500,000 and $1 million on gambling trips. Mark, despite his financial success, confesses that his life feels hollow. His days have been spent in the company of people he dislikes, accumulating wealth simply to buy extravagant things that ultimately bring no real satisfaction. He has cycled through multiple marriages, each time with a new trophy wife, and surrounds himself with expensive cars and other status symbols. Yet beneath the surface, there is no real fulfillment, only an ongoing, exhausting pursuit of something undefined. Ferriss uses Mark's story as a cautionary tale to highlight the difference between traditional conceptions of wealth and the philosophy of the new rich, NR. The primary distinction Ferriss makes is between those who work endlessly to amass financial wealth in the hope of future happiness and those who prioritize time, freedom, and experience in the present. The NR are not defined by their net worth, but by their ability to control their own time, live where they want, and engage in meaningful experiences without deferring them to an uncertain retirement. Ferriss argues that most people mistakenly chase money itself, believing that a certain bank balance will equate to security and fulfillment. However, in reality, many of the wealthiest individuals remain trapped in a cycle of work, consumption, and dissatisfaction, never actually enjoying the fruits of their labor. He introduces the concept of relative wealth, that is, the idea that income should not be measured in absolute terms, but rather in relation to time and mobility. A person making $40,000 per year while working just 4 hours a week in a location of their choice is far wealthier than someone making $500,000 per year while working 80-hour weeks with no free time. The NR are those who focus on maximizing quality of life rather than just their income. To illustrate this, Ferriss contrasts the traditional path, one of long hours, delayed gratification, and eventual retirement, with the NR model, where financial stability is achieved through automation, outsourcing, and lifestyle design that allows for financial and personal freedom much earlier in life. He challenges the reader to examine whether they are on a path that leads to true freedom or simply a high-paying prison. Ferriss asks, are you working to create options for yourself, or are you merely accumulating money in hopes of a future you may never fully enjoy? The lesson from Mark's story is clear. Money alone does not create freedom, and a life spent chasing wealth for its own sake often leads to an empty existence. Instead, Ferriss urges readers to rethink their priorities, focus on acquiring time and mobility, and avoid the trap of working harder just to spend more on meaningless luxuries. Rules that change the rules. Everything popular is wrong. Ferriss begins this section with a surprising anecdote about how he won the Chinese kickboxing national championship with only 4 weeks of training. Rather than winning by being the best fighter, he won by carefully studying the competition rules and identifying loopholes. The first exploit involved rapid dehydration before weigh-ins, which allowed him to register in a much lower weight class. Then, after rehydrating, he would enter the ring significantly heavier than his opponents. The second loophole was a rule stating that if a fighter was pushed out of the ring 3 times in a single round, they would automatically lose. Ferriss focused entirely on pushing his opponents off the platform rather than engaging in direct combat, winning every match by technical knockout. This story serves as a metaphor for the larger theme of the chapter. Success is not necessarily about working harder, but about playing a different game. Ferriss argues that most people blindly follow traditional paths, long hours, career promotions, gradual wealth accumulation, without questioning whether these approaches actually work. He encourages readers to think critically about the rules they have been taught and consider alternative ways to achieve success with less effort and greater impact. One of Ferriss's key arguments is that traditional career paths are deeply flawed because they rely on outdated models of work. The 40-hour workweek, for instance, was designed for factory labor in the industrial age and has little relevance in today's digital economy. Yet, many people continue to believe that working more hours equates to greater productivity, when in reality, effectiveness is far more important than sheer effort. Ferriss urges readers to challenge societal norms and experiment with unconventional approaches, whether in business, career choices, or time management. He introduces several fundamental rules that separate the NR from the rest of the population. First, he argues that retirement is a flawed concept. It assumes that people must spend their most productive years working tirelessly in order to enjoy life later, when they may no longer have the energy or health to do so. Instead, Ferriss promotes the idea of mini-retirements, where people take extended breaks throughout their lives rather than waiting until old age. Second, he argues that people should focus on their strengths rather than wasting time fixing weaknesses. Specialization and leveraging unique skills lead to disproportionate success, whereas trying to be competent in everything results in mediocrity. Another crucial lesson from this chapter is that the timing is never perfect. Many people postpone their dreams under the illusion that a better time will come, but Ferriss argues that waiting for perfect conditions is just a way to avoid taking action. He encourages readers to take calculated risks, emphasizing that most fears of failure are overblown. Furthermore, he introduces the idea that asking for forgiveness is better than asking for permission. People often get bogged down in bureaucracy or fear rejection, but in many cases, simply taking bold action first and dealing with the consequences later leads to greater success. By the end of the chapter, Ferriss makes it clear that blindly following conventional wisdom is a recipe for mediocrity. The NR succeed not by working harder, but by questioning assumptions, breaking rules, and focusing on results rather than effort. He challenges readers to examine their current strategies and consider whether they are optimizing their lives or simply following outdated models that no longer serve them. Dodging bullets, fear setting, and escaping paralysis. This chapter introduces one of Ferriss's most powerful concepts, fear setting, a method for overcoming fear and decision paralysis. He begins with the story of Hans Keeling, a successful corporate lawyer who was deeply unhappy with his career but too afraid to leave. While on vacation in Brazil, Hans had a transformative experience while paragliding over Rio de Janeiro. In that moment, he realized that the fear of leaving his job was entirely psychological. He was not trapped, he was simply afraid to act. The next day, he submitted his resignation and never looked back. Ferriss argues that fear is the primary force that keeps people stuck in unsatisfying situations. However, most fears are vague and undefined, which makes them seem insurmountable. The solution is to clearly define the worst-case scenarios. He introduces fear setting, an exercise where individuals write down their biggest fears in extreme detail, analyze the probability of each fear happening, and determine ways to mitigate or recover from them. By confronting fears in this structured way, people often realize that their worst-case scenarios are either highly unlikely or easily reversible. He recounts his own experience with fear when he wanted to take a year-long sabbatical but was paralyzed by doubts. He worried that his business would collapse, that he would lose all his money, and that he would have no way to recover. However, when he applied fear setting, he realized that even in the worst-case scenario, he could still find ways to recover, whether by taking a temporary job, cutting expenses, or simply starting over. This realization gave him the confidence to take action. Ferriss also examines the hidden costs of inaction. People often think that avoiding risk is the safest option, but in reality, delaying decisions can be just as dangerous. Staying in a miserable job, for instance, can lead to years of wasted potential, declining mental health, and regret. The NR approach risk differently by asking, "What's the worst that could happen?" rather than, "What if I fail?" This shift in mindset allows them to take bold actions that lead to greater freedom and fulfillment. By the end of the chapter, Ferriss urges readers to embrace fear as a tool for decision-making rather than an obstacle. By defining their fears, they can strip them of their power and move forward with confidence. His ultimate message is clear: the greatest risk in life is not taking any risks at all. System reset, being unreasonable and unambiguous. Ferriss begins this chapter with a striking anecdote about a challenge he presented to students at Princeton University. He offered a round-trip ticket to any destination in the world to any student who could complete a seemingly simple task: get in touch with 3 nearly impossible-to-reach people, such as celebrities or world leaders, and get at least one to respond to 3 questions. Out of the 20 enthusiastic students who expressed interest, none followed through. Their excuses varied, but ultimately their inaction stemmed from a single psychological barrier. They assumed that others would outperform them, so they didn't even try. Ferriss highlights this as a profound example of how most people overestimate competition and underestimate their own abilities. By contrast, the students who took on the challenge the following year, after hearing the previous failure's story, completed it with remarkable success. The lesson is clear. Being unrealistic is often easier than being realistic because there is less competition at the top. This chapter explores how conventional logic, which encourages people to be reasonable and follow the rules, often leads to mediocrity. Ferriss argues that progress depends on the unreasonable person, citing George Bernard Shaw, who claimed that those who refuse to conform are the ones who shape the world. He urges readers to redefine their approach to life and success by challenging assumptions about what is possible. Instead of setting average goals, people should aim for extraordinary ones, as they require the same, if not less effort, but yield significantly greater rewards. Ferriss then introduces the concept of dreamlining, which is his alternative to traditional goal setting. He explains that most people never achieve what they want because their desires remain vague and unstructured. Dreamlining involves making goals tangible by setting timelines and treating dreams as actionable projects rather than distant fantasies. He emphasizes that these goals must be unrealistic to be effective, as unrealistic goals generate excitement and energy, while realistic ones often lead to stagnation. He provides a framework for setting these goals, encouraging readers to identify things they want to have, be, and do within 6 to 12 months, then break them down into concrete steps. The chapter concludes by reinforcing the idea that uncertainty and discomfort are necessary for growth. Ferriss argues that those who embrace the unknown and challenge themselves to think bigger will achieve far more than those who play it safe. He leaves the reader with a powerful question: what would you do if success were guaranteed? By acting as if this were true, people remove the mental barriers that hold them back and begin to live life on their own terms. The end of time management, illusions, and Italians. Ferriss opens this chapter by dismantling the concept of traditional time management, arguing that time management is a misleading obsession that causes people to focus on doing more instead of doing what matters. He explains that conventional wisdom encourages filling each moment of the day with productive tasks, but this often results in busyness rather than effectiveness. Most people, he argues, are trapped in a cycle of work that is neither fulfilling nor particularly productive, mistaking motion for progress. He introduces 2 foundational principles that drive his approach to productivity: the 80-20 principle, Pareto's law, and Parkinson's law. The 80-20 principle states that 80% of outcomes result from 20% of efforts. This means that a small fraction of work is responsible for the majority of success, and most tasks contribute little or nothing to meaningful progress. Ferriss demonstrates how applying this principle to his business allowed him to identify and eliminate time-wasting clients and low-impact tasks, cutting his work hours drastically while doubling his income. Parkinson's law, on the other hand, states that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. If someone has a week to finish a task, they will take the full week, even if it only requires a few hours of real effort. Ferriss explains that setting artificially tight deadlines forces people to focus, eliminate distractions, and work efficiently. By combining Pareto's law with Parkinson's law, he argues that it is possible to achieve extraordinary results in a fraction of the time most people assume is necessary. To illustrate his point, Ferriss shares a case study of a businessman named Charney, who was working 40-plus hours a week but struggling to achieve meaningful progress. By applying Ferriss's principles, he cut his work week in half and became exponentially more productive. The secret, Ferriss explains, lies in eliminating unnecessary tasks, streamlining decision-making, and setting clear boundaries. He challenges the reader to apply these principles by identifying their most high-impact activities and slashing their working hours accordingly. Ferriss also critiques the corporate culture of performative busyness, where employees try to appear busy rather than focusing on results. He humorously describes how many workers engage in pointless meetings, excessive email checking, and unnecessary multitasking, all of which dilute effectiveness. He encourages readers to adopt a results-oriented mindset, focusing only on tasks that generate meaningful outcomes while eliminating everything else. The chapter concludes with a simple but powerful takeaway. Being busy is not the same as being productive. Instead of filling time with work, Ferriss urges readers to focus on maximizing impact with minimal effort. The real goal is not to do more, but to do less, while achieving more, freeing up time for experiences that matter. The low-information diet, cultivating selective ignorance. Ferriss opens this chapter with a bold declaration. He does not watch the news, read newspapers, or follow mainstream media, and neither should you. He argues that consuming large amounts of information is a distraction, not a virtue, and that most people waste an enormous amount of time absorbing irrelevant, negative, or unactionable information. His personal example is striking. He claims to have purchased only one newspaper in 5 years, and that was solely because it came with a discount on a Diet Pepsi at an airport. The core idea of this chapter is that most information is noise, not signal. Ferriss explains that just as the body can become overloaded with junk food, the mind can become overloaded with junk information. He warns that excessive news consumption leads to anxiety, paralysis, and a false sense of urgency, while providing little to no tangible benefit. Instead, he advocates for selective ignorance, a strategy that involves deliberately ignoring information that does not contribute to one's immediate goals. Ferriss presents an extreme but practical approach to this concept, a one-week media fast. He challenges readers to go an entire week without consuming news, magazines, audiobooks, or any non-essential information. He argues that after doing this, people will realize that they have missed nothing important, as truly significant events always find a way to reach them through conversations with others. The point is not to be uninformed, but to filter information carefully and only consume what is relevant and useful. In addition to cutting out mainstream media, Ferriss advocates for reducing email and phone usage. He reveals that he checks email only once per week and never responds to voicemail when abroad. This is not because emergencies never happen, but because when people know you don't respond to emergencies, the emergencies tend to disappear. He argues that by setting firm boundaries, people can train others to be more self-sufficient and reduce the constant flow of interruptions that consume time and attention. To further illustrate the benefits of selective ignorance, Ferriss describes how he applies this principle to business decisions. Instead of trying to research everything himself, he relies on trusted experts and peers to synthesize information for him. For example, during a U.S. presidential election, he made his decision by asking a few well-informed friends about their choices rather than spending hours reading articles and watching debates. This approach allowed him to stay informed while avoiding unnecessary information overload. The chapter ends with a powerful message. Information consumption should be intentional and strategic, not automatic and compulsive. Ferriss argues that by adopting a low-information diet, people can reclaim their time, focus on what truly matters, and dramatically improve their productivity and peace of mind. Interrupting interruption and the art of refusal. Ferriss begins this chapter by emphasizing the necessity of developing a strong ability to say no. He reflects on his own experiences in college, where he deliberately made himself difficult to deal with when it mattered most. If he received anything less than an A on an assignment, he would visit the grader's office with hours of questions, ensuring that they thought twice before ever giving him a low grade again. This, he argues, is a crucial life lesson. Be difficult when it counts. He compares this to playground dynamics, where bullies typically avoid the kids who fight back, even if they don't win. The chapter then shifts to discussing interruptions, which Ferriss defines as anything that prevents the uninterrupted completion of a critical task. He categorizes interruptions into three main types: time wasters, time consumers, and empowerment failures. Time wasters include unnecessary meetings, social calls, and non-urgent emails, all of which he argues should be minimized or eliminated. Time consumers are repetitive tasks that, while necessary, still take up significant chunks of time. These can often be automated or delegated. Empowerment failures occur when people require approval for trivial matters, which Ferriss believes should be resolved by giving employees or team members more autonomy. He offers practical methods for eliminating interruptions, including limiting email checking to twice per day, setting clear boundaries on availability, and aggressively avoiding meetings. Meetings, he insists, should only be held for decision-making, not for discussion. If a meeting must happen, he recommends setting a strict end time and, if possible, sending someone else in your place. Additionally, Ferriss advises adopting the puppy-dog-close technique when trying to change habits in a workplace. Instead of pushing for a radical, permanent shift, propose a trial period. People are more likely to accept change when they believe it is temporary. Ferriss concludes by reinforcing the importance of training others to respect your time. If people know they cannot interrupt you for trivial matters, they will learn to be more self-sufficient. He warns that at first others may resist, but ultimately they will adjust. The ability to eliminate unnecessary interruptions, he argues, is one of the most powerful tools for reclaiming time and achieving true freedom. Outsourcing life. Offloading the rest and a taste of geo-arbitrage. In this chapter, Ferriss introduces the concept of outsourcing personal and professional tasks, illustrating how this can dramatically increase efficiency and free up time for more important activities. He begins with the story of A.J. Jacobs, an Esquire magazine editor, who decided to outsource his entire life, from researching articles to handling personal tasks like arguing with his wife on his behalf. This, while humorous, serves as an example of how outsourcing can extend beyond just business operations and become a tool for personal efficiency. Ferriss explains that geo-arbitrage, the practice of leveraging differences in global labor costs, can allow individuals to afford high-quality services at a fraction of what they would pay in Western countries. By hiring virtual assistants, VAs, in countries like India or the Philippines, one can offload repetitive, time-consuming work at a low cost. He shares his own experiences working with remote assistants, detailing how he was initially skeptical, but ultimately found that outsourcing allowed him to focus on high-value tasks while delegating routine responsibilities. The process of hiring and managing virtual assistants is covered extensively. Ferriss provides step-by-step instructions, including where to find VAs, what tasks to delegate, and how to ensure effective communication. He advises starting small, assigning basic tasks first to build trust and assess the assistant's capabilities. Over time, tasks can expand to include customer service, appointment scheduling, and even financial management. He also emphasizes the importance of clear instructions, arguing that most outsourcing failures occur due to vague communication rather than incompetence on the assistant's part. Beyond business, Ferriss explores the potential of outsourcing for personal tasks. He recounts how he outsourced everything from arguing over credit card fees to having assistants book flights and research vacation destinations. This approach, he argues, allows individuals to eliminate unnecessary mental clutter and focus on activities that truly matter. The ultimate goal is to become the architect of one's own time, designing a life where only the most fulfilling and essential tasks remain on one's personal to-do list. Ferriss concludes by addressing common concerns. Some people worry that outsourcing is unethical, while others feel uncomfortable relinquishing control. He counters these objections by arguing that outsourcing creates economic opportunities in developing countries and that learning to delegate is a critical skill for anyone seeking true personal freedom. The chapter ends with a challenge. Experiment with outsourcing one small task and observe the impact on productivity and peace of mind. Income Autopilot. 1. Finding the Muse. This chapter serves as a blueprint for creating an automated income stream, which Ferriss refers to as the Muse. He begins by challenging the conventional idea that entrepreneurship must be all-consuming and risky. Instead, he argues that the best businesses are those that generate high income with minimal time investment. The goal is not to build a massive company, but to create a highly efficient, low-maintenance business that funds one's ideal lifestyle. Ferriss introduces several principles for selecting a profitable muse. He emphasizes the importance of choosing a niche market rather than trying to appeal to everyone. The most successful businesses, he explains, serve a specific group of customers with a unique product or service. To identify potential markets, he suggests looking at one's own interests and expertise, as familiarity with a niche increases the likelihood of success. He also advises focusing on products that have high profit margins and low operational complexity, ensuring that they can be easily outsourced or automated. To illustrate his method, Ferriss shares the story of Douglas Price, an entrepreneur who built a business selling sound libraries to musicians and television producers. Price followed Ferriss's four-step process. First, he selected a niche he understood, musicians in need of quality sound samples. Next, he brainstormed potential products, choosing high-value sound libraries that could be drop-shipped directly from manufacturers. He then tested demand by auctioning the products on eBay before committing to large-scale inventory purchases. Finally, after validating the business model, he automated operations, reducing his workload to just a few hours per week while maintaining steady income. Ferriss also outlines a key principle of the NR approach: testing before investing. Instead of assuming a product will sell, entrepreneurs should validate demand through low-cost advertising tests. One method is to create a basic website and run Google Ads to gauge customer interest. If enough people express interest, then and only then should the business be fully launched. This strategy, he argues, minimizes financial risk while maximizing the likelihood of success. Another critical component of this chapter is the shift from service-based businesses to product-based businesses. Ferriss warns against business models that require trading time for money, such as consulting or freelancing, as they still demand active work. Instead, he advocates for businesses that generate passive income, allowing the entrepreneur to step away while the business continues to run. He provides examples of ideal muse businesses, including digital products, dropshipping, and subscription-based services, all of which can be automated and scaled. Ferriss closes by addressing common objections. Many people assume they need groundbreaking ideas to start a business, but he insists that refinement and execution matter far more than originality. He urges readers to focus on simple, low-maintenance businesses that provide steady income rather than chasing billion-dollar startup dreams. The goal is not to become the next Steve Jobs, but to create a lifestyle of freedom, where work serves life rather than the other way around. Income Autopilot 2, Testing the Muse. Ferriss begins this chapter by dismantling the myth that intuition and experience are reliable predictors of business success. He highlights the failure of seasoned professionals, such as book publishers and venture capitalists, to accurately forecast the success of products and ideas. His key message is that traditional business planning, relying on gut feelings or market research, often leads to costly mistakes. Instead, he advocates for a method called micro-testing, which involves small, low-cost experiments to gauge real customer interest before fully committing to a business idea. He introduces a counterintuitive but powerful concept. Never ask people if they would buy a product. Instead, ask them to buy it. Hypothetical interest is worthless. Real purchasing behavior is the only metric that matters. To demonstrate this, he provides an example. If 10 people say they would purchase a product, but when asked to actually buy it, they decline, the initial interest was an illusion. This phenomenon occurs because people often give polite, socially desirable answers rather than honest ones. Ferriss then outlines a step-by-step process for testing a potential muse, a low-maintenance business that generates automated income. He recommends using Google AdWords to drive traffic to a simple test website, which mimics an actual product page but stops short of charging customers. If users click the Buy Now button, it signals genuine interest, allowing entrepreneurs to validate demand without investing in inventory or production. He provides detailed guidance on setting up these test sites, selecting keywords, and interpreting results. He also addresses a common concern: legality. Some businesses attempt to charge customers before manufacturing their products, which is often illegal. Instead, he recommends a backorder approach, informing potential customers that the product is temporarily out of stock but will be available soon. This allows entrepreneurs to measure demand while maintaining ethical business practices. The chapter concludes with an emphasis on the importance of speed. Traditional business plans take months or years, but Ferriss's micro-testing method allows for validation in 5 days or less. He challenges readers to abandon lengthy market research in favor of rapid experimentation, arguing that this lean approach dramatically reduces risk while increasing the likelihood of success. Income Autopilot 3, MBA, Management by Absence. In this chapter, Ferriss challenges traditional business management, which he believes is outdated and unnecessarily complex. He argues that most entrepreneurs mistakenly assume they must be involved in every aspect of their business, leading to burnout and inefficiency. Instead, he proposes management by absence, MBA, a system designed to make a business self-sustaining without the owner's constant involvement. His goal is to create a business architecture that runs itself, allowing the owner to step away entirely. To illustrate his point, he contrasts two conflicting philosophies of management. One, championed by Herb Kelleher of Southwest Airlines, advocates for prioritizing employee happiness, while the other, embodied by Revlon's Charles Revson, is built on strict authoritarian control. Ferriss rejects both models, arguing that the best way to manage employees is to eliminate the need for them whenever possible. His approach focuses on automating and outsourcing, ensuring that human oversight is minimized. He introduces the concept of the remote control CEO, showcasing the example of Stephen McDonnell, the CEO of Applegate Farms, who spends just 1 day per week at his company's headquarters. McDonnell has designed a system where decision-making is delegated, allowing him to maintain control without being physically present. Ferriss emphasizes that this level of automation is not exclusive to large businesses. Small businesses and startups can achieve similar results by implementing clear processes and leveraging digital tools. Ferriss provides a blueprint for setting up an automated business, focusing on removing bottlenecks. He argues that entrepreneurs should not be the main point of contact for decision-making. Instead, they should establish guidelines that allow employees or contractors to resolve issues independently. This prevents the common scenario where business owners are constantly interrupted with minor decisions. He also stresses the importance of setting limits on communication. Business owners should not be answering customer service inquiries, approving every transaction, or handling daily operations. To further illustrate his philosophy, Ferriss describes his own company's structure. He reveals that although he technically employs only one full-time person, his business operates with a network of outsourced workers and automated systems, allowing him to spend minimal time managing it. He details how he has structured his workflow to avoid unnecessary emails, phone calls, and meetings, enabling him to focus on strategic decisions rather than routine tasks. The chapter concludes with practical steps for removing oneself from a business. Ferriss advises entrepreneurs to document every repeatable process, create a detailed operations manual, and empower employees or virtual assistants to make decisions within predefined limits. He asserts that a business should be designed to function without the owner, allowing them to reclaim their time and live a life of freedom rather than being trapped in their own creation. Disappearing Act: How to Escape the Office. In this chapter, Ferriss addresses a major challenge for employees seeking more freedom: how to negotiate remote work. He acknowledges that many people cannot simply quit their jobs to pursue entrepreneurship, so they must find ways to create flexibility within their existing employment. His solution is a stealth approach to transitioning from office work to remote work, ensuring that employers see it as a business benefit rather than a personal perk. He begins by dismantling the assumption that remote work is inherently unproductive. Using case studies, he demonstrates that employees who work from home often achieve higher output due to fewer distractions, no commute, and a more comfortable environment. He presents the story of Sherwood, a mechanical engineer who successfully transitioned to remote work by strategically proving his increased efficiency outside the office. Sherwood's plan involved eliminating unnecessary meetings, automating repetitive tasks, and gradually reducing his physical presence at work without drawing attention to it. Ferriss then outlines a 5-step method for securing remote work approval. The first step is making oneself indispensable. Employees must increase their value to the company by delivering exceptional results. This gives them leverage when negotiating for remote work. The second step is creating a test run, calling in sick or working remotely for a short period while maintaining or exceeding normal productivity. By doing this, employees can gather quantifiable evidence that remote work does not harm performance. The third step is preparing a business case. Ferriss advises employees to present their managers with a structured argument, emphasizing the benefits of remote work, such as increased efficiency, cost savings for the company, and the ability to be available outside of standard office hours. The fourth step is proposing a temporary trial period, which reduces managerial resistance by framing the change as reversible. Ferriss suggests requesting just 1 or 2 days of remote work per week at first, gradually expanding once the trial period proves successful. The final step is expanding remote time incrementally. Employees should ensure their remote work days are the most productive of the week, documenting their accomplishments and gradually increasing their time away from the office. If resistance arises, Ferriss recommends using what he calls the puppy dog close, presenting remote work as a small, risk-free experiment that can be revoked at any time. This approach makes it psychologically easier for managers to agree. The chapter concludes with a bold proposition. If an employer refuses to allow remote work despite clear benefits, employees should consider quitting or transitioning to self-employment. Ferriss asserts that modern technology makes traditional office work increasingly obsolete, and those who fail to embrace flexibility will be left behind. He urges readers to take control of their work environment, either by negotiating freedom within their job or by designing an independent lifestyle that aligns with their goals. Beyond repair, killing your job. Ferriss opens this chapter with a bold assertion. Some jobs are beyond saving, and attempting to improve them is like redecorating a prison cell. Cosmetic changes won't make an inherently bad situation better. He recounts his own experiences of quitting 3 jobs and being fired from all the rest, describing how getting fired is often a disguised blessing. Many people suffer through miserable careers out of fear of uncertainty, But in reality, staying in the wrong job for years or decades is far riskier than taking the leap into the unknown. Ferriss argues that most people do not leave bad jobs because of pride. They are unwilling to admit they made a mistake. But refusing to course correct out of fear of looking foolish only compounds the problem, leading to a lifetime of regret. He introduces a concept he calls fear setting, urging readers to analyze their worst-case scenarios realistically. Most people assume quitting will lead to financial ruin, but Ferriss methodically dismantles these fears. He points out that temporary sacrifices, such as reducing unnecessary expenses, freelancing, or even using unemployment benefits, can bridge the gap between leaving a toxic job and finding something better. The real danger is in waiting too long and becoming too entrenched to escape. He highlights the tendency of people to suffer unnecessarily rather than face temporary discomfort for long-term gain, calling this the cheesecake factor. Much like someone forcing themselves to eat an entire ruined cheesecake rather than admitting they made a bad batch, people cling to jobs that make them miserable rather than cutting their losses and moving on. Ferriss offers a counterintuitive perspective on resumes and job hopping. Many people fear that quitting will make them unemployable, but he argues that unique experiences such as world travel, launching a business, or even taking time off for self-improvement make candidates stand out in job interviews. Hiring managers are often bored in their own jobs and are far more interested in candidates with compelling stories than in those who follow conventional career paths. He suggests that rather than framing gaps in employment as a problem, people should frame them as conscious choices that make them more skilled, worldly, and adaptable. The chapter ends with a clear directive. For those in an unrewarding job, it's time to take action, whether through side businesses, freelancing, or transitioning into a remote role. Ferriss encourages readers to stop rationalizing their suffering and start designing a life that aligns with their values. He asserts that the real risk isn't leaving, it's staying in a job that drains time, energy, and potential. Mini retirements, embracing the mobile lifestyle. Ferriss introduces this chapter with a simple yet revolutionary idea. Rather than saving up for a traditional retirement at the end of life, people should distribute their retirement in chunks throughout their lives. He calls these mini-retirements extended periods of time off work that allow people to travel, learn, and experience the world while they are still young and active. He contrasts this with the traditional approach to retirement, which often results in decades of overwork followed by an abrupt transition into idleness, which many retirees find unfulfilling. By taking multiple extended breaks throughout life, people can integrate periods of rest and reinvention without waiting until old age. To illustrate the benefits of mini-retirements, Ferriss shares the parable of the Mexican fisherman, in which an American businessman suggests an elaborate scheme to grow a small fishing operation into a massive enterprise. The fisherman, however, already enjoys the simple pleasures that the businessman's plan aims to achieve, spending time with family, relaxing, and fishing. This story underscores Ferriss's argument that many people chase success without ever defining what a fulfilling life actually looks like. Ferriss details how mini-retirements are not just for the independently wealthy. He provides examples of people who have structured their lives around extended travel, either by working remotely, freelancing, or using geo-arbitrage to live cheaply in foreign countries. He argues that the cost of living in many destinations is far lower than in the US or Europe, making extended travel more affordable than most people realize. By shifting expenses from their home country to a lower-cost location, individuals can sustain a high quality of life while working significantly less. One of the major challenges of mini-retirements is overcoming mental resistance. Ferriss acknowledges that people often struggle with the idea of stepping away from work, fearing they will fall behind or lose status. He counters this by highlighting the benefits of stepping outside of routine, emphasizing that breaks from work often lead to greater creativity, productivity, and happiness in the long run. He also suggests practical strategies for making mini-retirements work, such as subletting a home to reduce expenses and automating business processes to maintain income while traveling. The chapter concludes with a challenge to readers. Instead of waiting decades for the perfect time to retire, why not take a step toward a mini retirement now? Ferriss encourages people to plan their first extended break, even if it is just for a few weeks, and see firsthand how transformative it can be. His ultimate message is clear: life is meant to be lived now, not just at some distant point in the future. Filling the void, adding life after subtracting work. Ferriss opens this chapter with an unexpected revelation. Once people achieve freedom from work, many experience a deep sense of aimlessness, while most people assume that unlimited free time will lead to happiness. The reality is that too much idle time can cause existential crises, boredom, and even depression. He shares his own experience of waking up without an alarm for the first time in years, expecting to feel liberated, only to be overwhelmed by the question, "What am I supposed to do all day?" This moment of realization led him to a crucial insight: escaping work is not enough. A fulfilling life requires meaningful engagement, purpose, and challenges. To address this, Ferriss explores the phenomenon of post-success depression, which affects both newly retired individuals and successful entrepreneurs who have achieved financial freedom. Many people spend years pursuing a goal only to find that achieving it leaves them feeling empty rather than fulfilled. He argues that the root cause of this dissatisfaction is a lack of purposeful struggle. Humans thrive on challenge and growth, and removing all work-related responsibilities can create a void that leads to psychological distress. Ferriss proposes several strategies for overcoming this void. The first is redefining work, shifting from income-driven tasks to personally meaningful projects. He shares stories of people who, after retiring or automating their businesses, found new purpose through volunteering, learning new skills, or pursuing creative endeavors. He encourages readers to find activities that engage their curiosity and provide a sense of contribution rather than falling into passive consumption. Another key strategy is learning new skills. Ferriss argues that mastering new abilities, whether a language, a sport, or an art form, keeps the mind sharp and engaged. He provides resources for accelerated learning, including language immersion techniques and structured learning approaches. He also emphasizes the value of service to others, arguing that helping others is one of the most reliable ways to find fulfillment. The chapter closes with a critical insight: more free time does not automatically create a meaningful life. Intentional action does. Ferriss urges readers to structure their newfound freedom wisely, filling their days with experiences that bring joy, challenge, and connection. His final advice is to view life as an evolving experiment, constantly testing new interests and passions, rather than expecting fulfillment to arise automatically. His message is clear: freedom from work is only the beginning. What comes next is up to you. The top 13 new rich mistakes. Ferriss opens this chapter by emphasizing that mistakes are inevitable when designing a lifestyle based on freedom and automation. The transition from traditional work structures to the new rich lifestyle requires a mindset shift, and missteps along the way are part of the process. However, some errors are more damaging than others, and recognizing them early can save time, energy, and financial resources. One of the most common mistakes is losing sight of dreams and falling into work for work's sake. W4W. Ferriss warns that even after achieving financial independence, many people revert to old habits, filling their days with unnecessary tasks simply because they feel uneasy without structured work. To counter this, he encourages constant reflection on personal goals and dreams, ensuring that work serves life rather than the other way around. He also highlights micromanagement and excessive emailing as pitfalls, noting that many entrepreneurs sabotage their own freedom by refusing to delegate effectively. Instead of making every decision, he suggests setting clear guidelines and empowering assistants or employees to handle recurring issues autonomously. Another critical mistake is helping others solve the same problem multiple times. Ferriss advises creating documented if-then rules for employees, contractors, or virtual assistants to follow. By doing so, business owners can prevent themselves from being bombarded with repetitive queries. Similarly, he discourages chasing unqualified customers or expending effort on low-value prospects when existing income streams are sufficient. He also warns against answering unnecessary emails that do not contribute to business growth, recommending autoresponders and FAQs as simple solutions to reduce inbox clutter. A frequent misstep among the newly rich is working in environments meant for relaxation. Ferriss argues that blending workspaces with personal spaces, such as working from bed or the living room, leads to an inability to disconnect. He suggests establishing strict boundaries between work and leisure to maintain a clear separation between productivity and rest. He also emphasizes the importance of conducting regular 80-20 analyses, reviewing both business and personal activities every few weeks to ensure time and energy are focused on the most impactful efforts. Perfectionism is another common trap. Ferriss advises against striving for endless perfection in both business and life, as it often leads to procrastination and inefficiency. Instead, he advocates for a good-enough mindset, recognizing that diminishing returns set in after a certain point. He likens this to learning a language. Achieving 95% fluency may take 6 months, but pushing for 98% perfection could require decades. Other mistakes include blowing minor problems out of proportion to justify unnecessary work and treating non-urgent issues as emergencies. Many people unconsciously manufacture crises to fill their time, preventing themselves from fully embracing the freedom they've worked so hard to create. Ferriss advises focusing on meaningful life pursuits beyond work, such as creative projects, travel, or personal growth, rather than constantly seeking busy work. Finally, he cautions against viewing one job, project, or business as the ultimate purpose of life. While achieving financial independence is valuable, Ferriss reminds readers that no single endeavor should define their entire existence. He encourages embracing change, taking breaks, and continuously evolving. He ends with a powerful reminder that happiness is amplified through social connection. Work may provide financial security, but a fulfilling life requires strong relationships and shared experiences. The last chapter, an email you need to read. In this final chapter, Ferriss shifts from tactical advice to deep philosophical reflection on life, purpose, and urgency. He begins with a striking quote from Seneca: "There is nothing the busy man is less busied with than living." This sets the stage for a discussion on the illusion of productivity and the true meaning of a well-lived life. He argues that most people spend their lives postponing happiness, assuming that fulfillment will come once they reach financial milestones, career success, or retirement. However, he insists that delayed happiness is a dangerous illusion, as time is the only non-renewable resource. He includes an excerpt from Steve Jobs' famous Stanford commencement speech, in which Jobs describes how contemplating death daily helped him eliminate fear and unnecessary distractions. Ferriss echoes this sentiment, emphasizing that most fears are irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. He urges readers to strip away external expectations, societal pressures, and self-imposed fears of embarrassment or failure, focusing instead on what truly matters. Ferriss acknowledges that many people struggle with a sense of confusion about life, but he argues that this is not a problem to be solved. Instead of trying to make all the pieces fit into a perfect puzzle, he suggests embracing serendipity, spontaneity, and the unknown. Life should not be viewed as a rigid plan with fixed milestones. Rather, it should be approached with curiosity and a willingness to deviate from traditional paths. The chapter takes an emotional turn when Ferriss shares an email from a terminally ill young girl who contacted him from a hospital in New York. The girl's message profoundly impacted him, and he rereads it frequently as a reminder of what is truly important. The email included a poem titled "Slow Dance," which emphasizes the fleeting nature of life and the importance of being present. The poem describes simple yet profound moments, watching a butterfly, listening to the rain, hearing a child's laughter, urging the reader to slow down and appreciate life's beauty before it's too late. Ferriss uses this poignant message to reinforce his core philosophy. Life is not a race to be won, but an experience to be lived fully and intentionally. He challenges readers to reflect on their own lives, asking whether they are truly happy with how they spend their days. He warns against getting caught in the endless cycle of work, wealth accumulation, and societal expectations, urging readers to instead live boldly, take risks, and prioritize meaningful experiences over material achievements. As a final thought, Ferriss reminds readers that people don't think about us as often as we fear, and that worrying about others' opinions is largely a waste of time. He encourages embracing unconventional choices without concern for judgment, asserting that the only limits in life are the ones we impose on ourselves. The book concludes with a powerful call to action. Stop waiting, stop hesitating, and start living now. And that's a wrap on The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. If you found these insights valuable, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaways, and if there's a book you'd like me to summarize next, let me know in the comments. See you in the next one. With much love and gratitude.